Yoga has three elements to it. One is bend the body. Number two is mend the senses. And number three is end the mind. Bend the body, mend the senses, and end the mind. Now, that is the ultimate essence of yoga, to be able to end the mind. I know many people think, how can we live if we end the mind? What is this ending the mind, and what is this mending the senses? Now, for that, I'll share with you an incident that happened thousands of years back in Treta Yuga, in the time of Sri Rama. We all know Lord Sri Rama, right? His wife, Sita Mata, and Sita Ma's father, Janaka Maharaj. We all know about him, right? Now, Janaka Maharaj was a very great scholar. He read all the great scriptures. He was a very ardent devotee. He had great scholars in his palace, and a lot of rishis and saints used to be there. And every day they used to have lots of amazing discussions about yoga, about the ancient wisdom, about samadhi, about Brahmagyan, all these things. Great scholars used to be talking about it, and he used to listen. He loved listening to them every single day. Now, after some time, he was like, okay, this is all good. I'm listening, I'm reading, this is all fantastic. I'm doing some practices every day of yoga, but I want to experience Brahmagyan. What is Brahmagyan? How does it feel like? Nobody is giving me that experience. Everybody is talking for hours and hours and hours together. Everybody is great intellect, great scholar. So he gets very frustrated, and he says, if any of you in this kingdom does not or cannot provide me that Brahmajnana going forward, I will let you go from this kingdom. I don't want you to stay in this kingdom. And now, obviously, everybody is worried, because all these scholars, they have spent the time in the palace with Maharaj, and now they're asked to leave. So obviously, they will lose everything. Now, everybody was worried. Now, this news spreads obviously to the entire kingdom, because he declares it to the entire kingdom. Now, this news spreads to all parts of the kingdom, and it reaches one person. His name is Ashtavakra. Now, I don't know if many of you know about Ashtavakra. He's a rare ancient treasure. We all hear about Bhagavad Gita, which was done in Dwapara Yuga, in Sri Krishna Paramatma's time. But then in Treta Yuga, in the very beginning, there was an amazing text that was written called Ashtavakra Gita. And now this is a conversation between Ashtavakra and Maharaj King Janaka. Now, how does that happen? So the news goes to Ashtavakra, and then he says, okay, I'm going to go and talk to king about it. So he comes to the palace, and the guards at the palace does not allow him to come inside, because Ashtavakra, the word Ashtavakra, Ashta means 8, Vakra means contortions, means bends like this. His body had 8 bends like that. He was not like any of us perfect straight body. He had a deformed body. Now, obviously, guards looking at him, they were like, oh, who is this fellow trying to enter into the palace? No, you're not allowed. So he tries to persuade them, and finally, his voice reaches out into the palace. Somebody tells Maharaj, King Janak, and then Janaka says, okay, let him in. So Ashtavakra goes inside. So Janaka says, why are you here? He says, I am here to give you the experience of Brahmagyan. And then everybody in the, in the meeting place there in the palace, they start laughing at him, because he looks so deformed, so ordinary. He doesn't have any great pomp and show. He doesn't proclaim himself to be a guru, nothing, simple human being. And everybody laughs. And then Ashtavakra looks at them and he starts laughing too. And then all the scholars are like, okay, we are laughing at him, makes sense, because he has such a deformed body. He looks like a complete idiot. Like, we don't care. Why is he laughing back at us? So they ask him, why are you laughing? He says, you are all like the cobblers. Cobblers, cobblers who work with the skin to make the shoes. Then they get very angry. They say, you call us cobblers, you call us some people who are living on the street, we are great scholars, how dare you say that? Then he says, cobblers work with the skin, the external form. You are looking at my external form and coming to conclusions. So how different are you than the cobblers? And then everybody becomes quiet. Then Janaka sees this, King Janaka. He says, wow, there is something in this person. So he says, okay, I'm ready. Give me Brahmagyan now. Then Janaka says, Ashtavakra says, no, I cannot do this here because this palace is filled with rajas, tamas, gunas. Because it's all, pomp and show, glow and glitter and glamour, food, dance, music, and all of these things. So I cannot give that Brahmagyan here. You need to come with me. He says, no problem. I'll come wherever you want me to. So he says, okay, join me. And then he takes King Janaka outside of the city, Mithilapura, and then he goes to a forest. And then obviously when king goes anywhere, we know the entire paraffin, the whole people who follow him, they all come with him, the ministers, the queen, and the soldiers. And then after a point where they reach like a forest area, the Ashtavakra says, no, you don't need to come anymore. You can leave your king here. You can come back later. And then he takes them and they leave. They say, okay, we'll come back later in the evening. Now, Janaka and Ashtavakra are sitting at this crossroads. It's a road. It's right going into the forest right there. He says, okay, sit, Janaka. Then Ashtavakra asks Janaka, now, if I am giving you Brahmagyan, which means I am your guru. So do you accept me as your guru? He says, yes, I do. Then he says, if you accept me as a guru, then I need dakshina. We give whatever we can to the guru, an offering. And he says, can you give me guru dakshina? Then Janaka says, yes, I can give you my entire kingdom. Ask me whatever you want. All the wealth, everything, this kingdom, I can give you for the Brahmagyan that you are going to give me. Then Ashtavakra says, no, I don't need anything. I am an ascetic. Why do I need all these things? All that I need is your mind. Can you give me your mind? Then Janaka says, absolutely. My mind is yours. Then Ashtavakra says, just lie down here. And then he lies down. And then Ashtavakra leaves from there. He goes into the forest. Now, Janaka is there in that state. Then it's evening, sunset is happening. The soldiers and the ministers and everyone is waiting for the king to come back. He has never come back. So they obviously get worried. So they come looking for him. So they find him. He's lying down there. And they say, Maharaja, it's late in the night. It's getting late. Come on, we need to go. And then Janaka is like, doesn't move. Then they try to wake him up again a few times. Janaka doesn't move. And they get worried. What happened? What did this Ashtavakra do? Did he do some kind of black magic or some kind of thing to him? And then he left into the forest somewhere. So they go call the queen. The queen comes. Queen tries, Maharaja, please wake up. No response, nothing. Then they get really worried. So the minister sends the soldiers into the forest and said, go catch that guy and come. He did something to our king. So they go into the forest searching for Ashtavakra. They find him under a tree, sitting in deep, blissful meditation. They say, Ashtavakra, you did something to our king. He's not even getting up. Can you come and do something? So they bring him. And then Janaka is still in that state of what we call samadhi. And Ashtavakra comes to Janaka and he says, Maharaja, can you get up? Maharaja, can you get up? And then Janaka wakes up. And then he says, I have experienced Brahmajnana. In fact, the condition he puts is that I should experience Brahmajnana in the span of the time You know how we get onto a horse, you put one leg here and then you put the other leg around the horse and sit. In that moment of time, I want to experience. And he experiences Brahmagnana in that moment of time. And then he becomes obviously his disciple. And the outcome of that journey between Ashtavakra and King Janaka is the great ancient text called Ashtavakra Gita. It is extremely powerful text. It is like it doesn't beat around the bush. It is like a bullet coming and hitting you. There is no workaround, there is no explanation, nothing. It's like straight. It is simple yet extremely powerful. Now, why am I telling you this story? I used to practice yoga 15 years back. I used to uh, practice hatha yoga like you're doing, bend the body, right? And I used to do some meditation on my own, breathing. I learned some pranayam when I was a college student, almost 30, 40 years back. And so I used to do that. It was good for my wellness. And right around that time, I moved to Vancouver in 2006. And that is when I have met a rare ancient sage, Sunita Amma. And she looks very ordinary, just like Ashtavakra. Very simple. People wouldn't even recognize her to be a yogi. Just a simple human being. Doesn't have any pomp and show, no saffron robes, no garlands, no padnamaskars, nothing. So obviously we don't understand. So I went to her, she invited, I said, okay, I went. After that, I did a session of what she calls Sukshma Meditation. And that one meditation, I have experienced what King Janaka experienced. And I did not know anything at that time. I was complete novice. I did not have any knowledge of yogic wisdom. I did practice, some asanas and things like that. But in that one session and then subsequent sessions, I continued experiencing that, because after that experience, what you want to know comes to you. You don't have to go for it, because you are knowing the one through which you can know everything else. All the flood of ancient knowledge started to come. All the flood of ancient wisdom started to come. I'm opening book of Bhagavad Gita. I'm like, okay, I know this. I did not read Bhagavad Gita before. Opening Upanishads. Oh, beautiful. I know this. Adi Shankaracharya's great texts. Viveka Chudamani, Atma Bodha, Sadhana Panchakam, many, many texts. So I've realized in my journey that the ultimate goal of yoga is, of course, number one is to bend the body, start there, then mend the senses. Now, what happens in subtlest of the subtle, pure vibrations of ancient sages like Ashtavakra or Sunita Amma, or probably there are many more out there, is that vibration, ultimately, that subtlest of the subtle vibration penetrates us into the conscious, our own conscious, and then it cleans it. And that is where the mending of the senses happen, because these senses are like windows. We have windows in our house, right? What happens to the windows? All the dust comes, right? So what do? Once in a while, we dust them all, we clean them all so that we can get fresh air. So these five senses that we have need to be mended. They need to be fixed a little bit. Otherwise, they seek out all the sensual pleasures and they get trapped in that. So that cleaning has to happen first. And then mind has to be ended at the end. Ending of the mind is the ultimate state of yoga. That is when you start to experience Brahmagnana. As long as this mind is wandering and keeping on getting busy like this housefly, how the flies are. The flies keep jumping from filth to filth to filth. Now that fly has to become a honeybee. What does honeybee do? It doesn't jump and go to all garbage. One pointed concentration only on that flower with that nectar. Nothing else. Only the flower. Full focus on that pollen. And then it will go there and it will get stuck there. And it can't come out of it because it's experiencing bliss, the nectar. And that is the essence of yoga ultimately. And then you can still do your duties, you can still do your dharmas, karmas beautifully. And that is the power of ancient sages. What happens in this process is there are three aspects to our mind. One is the conscious mind. The conscious mind is the mind that is aware of everything. Right? You're conscious. I'm conscious about Nutanji. I'm conscious about Kumudji. I'm conscious about everyone here. I'm conscious about the space around me. This is the conscious mind. But what happens with that conscious mind is, if we are just conscious, that is great. But we unconsciously make so many mistakes because that conscious mind is filled with vices, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryas. So this conscious mind has to be fixed. It has to be cleansed first. Once that conscious mind is cleansed, then we will go to the next level called conscience. Conscience is that Atma, that inner voice. People say, I have intuition, I have inner voice. I don't believe. Unless you have gone through a journey of cleansing the conscious, you cannot really have that conscience working for you. That conscience has to be awakened. That is the Jivatma, inner being. The third step is, once that conscience is awakened, then it connects to the consciousness. Where is consciousness? That is Brahman. That is Brahmajnana. That consciousness is all pervading. Everywhere it is there. Here, there, everywhere. Sarvantriyami. Omnipresent. That consciousness. So Jivatma, consciousness is Paramatma. Paramatma. It is above, beyond, everywhere. Below you, around you, inside you, outside you, everywhere. And then you become super conscious. So that is the journey of yoga. That is the journey of Sukshma. Why we need to do Sukshma meditation is inside us. And we talked about it in our previous session. What is Sukshma? It's a foundation that we laid. So I'm continuing that, taking to the next level now. In that Sukshma Sarira, all these impurities are there. This Sarira, this physical body will perish one day. We all have to leave this physical body. But that Sukshma Sarira won't perish. That Sukshma Sharira is carrying all the patterns and conditions from this birth, from previous births, and then it goes back, and again it comes back into this world. We come birth after birth, going through this cycle of birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. Means coming and going, suffering, pain, never liberation. The ultimate goal of yoga is to break that cycle of birth and death, and then become one. And that Sukshma is what we will clean today.